Hi everyone, I'm Josh.
And I'm Jim, and this is the Dapper Meeple.
This show is about our love of gaming, the games we play, and the gaming community around this passion.
So pull up a chair, put on your Dapper Meeple hat, and join us at the table. Hey kids, remember, this is an adult podcast and may contain adult language.
Also, Dapper Meeple hat not required. This week we're bringing you a guest who has listened to every episode of the Dapper Meeple in only 2 days.
Preston is the manager of the local games workshop. He's coming in to talk to us about his experience in the gaming community, wargaming, RPGs, and just to have a lot of laughs.
So settle back and enjoy this episode of the Dapper Meeple.
All right, so we are back for the second time. We are actually fortunate enough to have somebody come in and talk with us. We've talked about this before. This year, we definitely want to have more people. We're a couple of, cis, straight white guys. Our view on the gaming community is always going to be limited by that. Like, we're only going to learn so much. So we always like to bring people in. We like to bring people in that are playing something different. It's reaching out to the community where we believe that anybody should have a seat at the table, regardless of what the table is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing that we talk about quite often here is that this hobby is really something that can reach everybody, no matter who they are, where they come from, or where they find themselves in life. They can sit down at a table and have a good time. And one of the areas that we talked about a lot that is kind of our blind spot is wargaming. So our guest today is, I guess you kind of call a specialist in that department. Definitely somebody who has a whole lot more experience than we do. But we wanted to bring him on, kind of talk about that and just, talk about general gaming stuff.
Cool. And with no further ado, let me introduce Preston to the audience.
How is it going? This is, I don't know, do I say audience?
Like there's not a lot of them yet.
That's fair.
But when they come back and watch this later and they're listening to it, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, for all the millions that are listening right now, that's me. I'm the guy.
Awesome. So I ran into Preston. He works the local games workshop.
Indeed.
And is just a absolute wealth of knowledge on the subject.
Oh, I appreciate that. I know nothing. This is all a ruse, and I have cliff notes everywhere I go.
I will tell you, he's probably the reason that I own as many paints as I do now, because I have gotten a ton of them,
and more to come.
I was going to say, and it's not even. I'm looking at finding a rack to keep them all in now because I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I don't even remember what color I bought last week.
I believe it.
So that's on my thing. But on top of that, man, I'm the big thing, and just real quick, we're going to talk about here in a second. Not here for the workshop, not here for work or anything. You're here because this is what we do, and the people that have listened to us know that we love gaming in most of its facets. There's a couple things every now and then, what was it? Tiny towns. Tiny towns will start a fight.
Yeah. Fuck tiny towns.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. Fuck tiny towns.
It's a great game and all. It was really the experience around it.
That's fair.
But that's what that's what I wanted to come on for, man.
Sure.
I want that experience. I want other people to come on and talk to us about what they do, about what they love, the passion for this. And even when we just kind of been BSing when I've coming in and stuff, there's always been this love and appreciation for what you do and the rest of the geek world. So yeah, that's why he's in here with us today. I guess let's start with what started you into gaming? Where did you first start from?
Well, I guess to preface first, just like we were, yes, I am. So I am the current manager of Games Workshop Hilltop East here in Virginia Beach. But anything I say, for the most part, I am off the clock. This has nothing to do with the company. My views are my own. Irrespective of the company at large, and anything I say is my own beliefs and does not reflect the views of the company.
Got it.
100%. Now, with the legal jargon out of the way,
right.
I guess what started me in wargaming was when I was a kid. We were in high school. Me and my 4 closest friends in high school. So if they ended up listening to this too, we all need to hang out soon. Right. It has been way too long, but we
have a table.
Oh, yeah. And just come down to Virginia Beach. We're going to hang out with these guys, do another podcast. I'll be a recurring guest.
It'll work. Yeah.
Let's do it.
That'd be
fine. No, so we used to go and we played Magic. So I guess that's where it all started. Okay. Of course it does, right? Everybody starts with
cardboard
Magic.
crack. That's how they get you.
So my best friend in high school, his name's Justin. He was playing Magic as a kid. That was his main jam. Like he is still Guru Gami Sensei in all things magic. But we became fast friends in school, and he was like, "Hey, I want to show you this hobby I'm into. It's called magic." And we played all the time. Got in trouble in class for playing. Lunch table. It became, again, the crack.
It was the obsession.
Oh
yes.
yeah,
Yep.
the coolest thing ever. So as we got deeper into that, we found that he brought it up one day for us to actually branch out, because we all had our own decks and we all play against each other. But he was like, "Hey, we should go to like an F&M or do a draft or something." And I had no idea what this was. So we was like, "Yeah, let's do it." We all just got our learner's permits and we're like, "Yeah, let's hit it." So we found a store. I'm originally from a town 2.5 hours away here called Tappahannock.
Okay, yeah.
So outside of Tappahannock, our closest game store was Jersey's Cards and Comics in Gloucester.
Yeah. Yep.
So we pretty much made it an effort every Friday night for us to scrounge up what little cash we had to go and play in an F&M. And at that time in 2010.
This is where you start dating yourself.
Yeah. Sure, we're getting too old here. But yeah, 2010 or 2011, I think, is when we were like sophomores or juniors in high school, and we would make our trip down to Jersey's, and we met the guy who was there at first. His name was John. Okay. I don't know if he's still there. If you are John, I'm sorry, I haven't seen you. Life happens.
Right.
But yeah, so John was super nice, though. He was that's where I learned, I guess, my first kind of semi-adult experience with being on my own and introducing myself with like customer service.
Sure.
He was very passionate about his store. It was small, super small, but he had enough tables in there to run, an F&M or an event here and there, that kind of thing. Yeah. And he had like 2 tables in the back for Warhammer, because he had some Warhammer stuff like in the back. Right. So it was kind of like a dirty secret. It's like, everybody come play Magic, but I got models.
I've seen those stores, actually.
It's almost like they got the beaded curtain you got to go through.
Yeah. It's like, well, here's some Warhammer. But no, it was great. And he was super welcoming. And even though we were kids, we had this kind of, stigma that it's like, oh, wherever we go, we're going to get kind of like treated like shit because we're, teenagers.
Sure.
But nothing was like that. We were super welcoming by the community. They loved having us there. We were good enough to start like winning against some of the adults there. So they said that we were the prodigies.
Okay. Yeah.
So every time they came through, we were doing stuff. So it was cool. So that's kind of where my first going to a store with friends to do nerd stuff started. Mm-hmm. I had Warhammer models as a kid, though. And that's where this kind of stories kind of evolved, right? So I always knew about nerd stuff. And it was during that time of us growing up, it was like, we got beat up for stuff like that.
I was getting ready to say, like,
yes.
how much of the geek side were you into before?
All of it.
Yeah.
But it was hardcore bullying, though.
Like
fights. Like, I grew up getting the shit beat out of me for liking Spider-Man and Star Wars and, all that stuff that you think is super rad.
I was going to say.
Go ahead, yeah.
All the stuff that people are making billions of dollars off of now.
So much money. Right. We're just getting the dog shit kicked out of us at school because I think Luke Skywalker's rad. Like, it's so messed up. But there was a thrift store or like a yard sale that I had gone to as a kid. And I picked up a box of their Warhammer models from what's called Warhammer Fantasy.
Okay.
Which were called Tomb Kings. And they were like Egyptian, skeleton, undead, pharaoh army style kind of thing. So it was really cool aesthetic. I was like, what are these sphinxes with these sickle swords, but they're like flesh coming off? I was like, what is this? So for like $2.50, I got like 2 boxes because they didn't know what they had.
Nice.
And I had no glue, no hobby experience whatsoever, and I was like 8.
Right.
So I asked an adult, like you should, especially if you are an adult, go get another one, of how to put these together. So it was like with super glue and some kind of like Bondo that we had at the house because my parents didn't know what it was either. They were like, yeah, we'll just slap them. And they looked horrible, but I loved them. Something happened in a move and they got lost. But I always remembered them and thought that, Warhammer was cool, but I didn't know what it was just yet. So fast forward, doing Magic, right, with my friends in high school. And more and more I kept seeing, I was like, oh, Warhammer's in the corner. What is that? Like, what is that? I don't know. Like, it's always that stigma of like, I don't know what that is, but I have these ideas because I've seen stuff or I've heard things. And it's always curious, right? Unless anybody comes and tells you what it is, you're almost just like, that's the drugs that we don't do.
Right. That's the step too far. You've seen the people that take those.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen what they are. Mom told me I'm better than that. Right? But So fast forward, and I'm going to college down here in Virginia Beach. I went to Regent University.
Okay.
And as I'm going to college, I met more nerdy friends in college. And I was like, oh, this is kind of awesome. Like, there's more people like me actually out in the world.
Right.
This is dope.
Yep.
And so getting into like going to conventions and doing cosplay and stuff. And this was my college experience was not the typical one, but still very fun. And we're doing all that. And then somebody was like, hey, if you want to make some money after we're about to graduate and after we're about to leave, why don't you come work at my local store that I go to where I play Vanguard? This is my friend Kelly, so if she's listening too, hey, shout out to you.
Nice.
But she was playing this card game called Vanguard.
Okay, yeah.
And it was very, I wouldn't say it's very Magic-esque, but it's another card battling game, I guess you would say. But it's a Japanese one.
Okay.
So she was like, hey, come to the store. They have Magic there. Maybe you'll like it. And that was Atlantis. So that was Atlantis in Norfolk. So that was my first experience in like a large store, totally dedicated to, nerdism.
I was going to say.
The hobbies, all of them though, like all the card games, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, Vanguard, Force of Will. They had a whole bunch of board games. I was blown away.
Yeah.
Walking in there, you're like, oh shit, these people take it for real.
Like they're serious.
Like, yeah, this is crazy. And I fell in love immediately. I just wanted to keep going and just like do more stuff. And I had no money.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I got to make money to do this stuff. So then fast forward, and that's how I ended up working there originally.
Okay, yeah.
They needed a Magic person at the time, and they really had no Magic expert, and I was like, well, that's all I got.
This was made just for me right now. Yeah. This is where I belong.
When somebody handed me a sheet and said, what are you good at? And I said, not dying and Magic. That was the end of the list. So they ended up, I got hired, thank God. I lied my way through acting like I knew what I was doing and just fake it till you make it.
Yep,
right?
Absolutely.
But but then to answer your original question, as I started working there, I was just, like I said, I just started as their like Magic guy for the most part. So helping people get Magic decks started, helping people find singles, helping people navigate their way through new sets that were coming out, and running some events at the store, like running a Modern. They had Modern every Wednesday at the time, and it was like Standard every Friday with Draft every Friday too.
Okay.
And then Commander was all over the place. So after that, now I'm in a store where they also sold Warhammer, but in a very large quantity.
I was going to say, yeah. They've always kind of had a good chunk back in that corner.
Yeah. It used to be out in the middle of the floor, actually. So they've changed up how the store looks since I've been there last. But it used to be they had a, I guess you would call it like a 6-bay shelf. On double side. So one side was totally dedicated to the fantasy version of Warhammer, and the other side was dedicated to Warhammer 40,000, which is the science fiction version.
Right.
But then they also had like War Machine and Wild West Exodus and Malifaux, and these are all other war games.
Right.
That were like flanking the Warhammer aisle. So it's like Warhammer was the core, to get people there. But they're like, ooh, what's this? Or ooh, what's that? And what are people doing on Saturdays? What is this thing? So it was all this wargaming stuff, and I was making new friends just working there and customers and that kind of stuff. And they were telling me, they're like, hey, you play Magic. How about you put that stuff away and try this thing that I love? And I'm like, cool. I got money now. And, discount helps when you work for a company. Right. So I was like, yeah, I'll get into it. And the first war game that I got into as an adult was actually not even Warhammer. It was War Machine from Privateer Press.
Okay. Is that the one with the tanks? Like, is it the World War II one?
That's Conflict 47.
Okay.
Or Flames of War, depending on which one.
Which one I'm looking at.
Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah.
But, me and a buddy of mine who I met as a customer, who is now my best friend, or basically family, his name's Richard. He came in off of a deployment one day, and I'm working in the store. And I had just been into War Machine with a few other friends for like maybe 2 weeks.
Right.
Tops. Hadn't even painted a model yet. Only just slapped them together and was learning the rules to play. So everybody's real hype. But he comes in and he's like, hey, me and my wife want to get into a miniature style game, but we don't know what we want to get into.
Right.
Can you help us? And it was a blast. He was super funny, very animated. He's Cuban, so like he was loud. Right. Everything was exciting.
Nice.
So we're shooting the shit and talking, and he's like, hey man, what do you think I should actually do now that you know me a little bit? And I'm like, I think you should not play this game, because at the time it was called Dust Tactics. First of all, if any Dust Tactics developers are listening, your game was fucking awful. Game was shit. Your models suck. Like your whole business plan, terrible. I hope you're doing well. But everything was awful.
Hey, does this count as our negative review? I'm just curious.
That's it. We got one.
Yeah. There it is. I'm the first one. No, it was crazy. He loved it because he was he's big a history buff, but like military history.
Sure.
So he likes all the romantic like World War II stuff.
Right. That's
Vietnam.
weird. Uniform guys do that stuff, and I don't.
Right.
Yeah. I'm with him. Got it.
Yep. It's so cool, right?
Hmm.
But so that was the aesthetic though of Dust Tactics, was that it was a miniatures game that was called Weird War.
Okay.
Where it's alternate history, basically, where the Germans make it past the end of the war, and the Japanese pull out and help them develop, like, I don't know, like these weird, like, human cyborg hybrids, and like they attach like tank missiles to bears for Russia and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Right, because that's every sci-fi Russia thing I see. That's exactly what happens.
It's bears.
It's a bear with some kind of ungodly weapon. Every one of them.
Every time. So it's like, so it had a cool aesthetic, and I could see why people were drawn to it. I just think that the rules at that time were all over the place.
Sure. Yeah,
they had tokens for things that didn't matter. They had stuff that didn't have tokens that super mattered. So, and then we're all over the place.
Right, right.
But he loved the aesthetic, and I was like, hey, put that down. That's the only time I think in my retail history I've ever told someone not to buy something.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely just didn't want them to waste their money and have a bad time. So I was like, hey, I'm playing this game now that's called War Machine. You should try it because we're best friends now. And
I know how that goes. Me and Keith Baker had the same thing happen at PAX.
there you go.
Yeah,
Right? But I handed him the box, and it was what they at their time it was called a 2-player starter box, where it had basically what's called a 0-point army on both sides. Because when you start adding points in War Machine, you start at 0 and go up instead of starting, I don't know, at a certain point level and trying to exceed it.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's a 2-player box for him and his wife, and I was like, hey, you guys take this home, build the models, and when you're ready, come back to the store, and I'll try to run you through a demo. Well, let's say maybe 2 days goes by. Almost not even.
Wow.
I'm at the store. He gives me a call, and he says, hey, verbatim, and correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, when I see you again. But he said, hey, bro, are you working right now? I was like, yeah, you called the store. I'm the guy that's here. He's like, hey, well, just stop doing that. You want to just come over? And I was like, for what? He's like, just show me how to play this game. He's like, I can't figure it out. My wife's not helping me. He's like, we got our models together, but we have no fucking idea what we're doing.
Yeah, right.
And that was the first time I was like, can I even do that? I was like, well, I guess I can. I'm not really like, beholden to anyone. I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I was like, once I get off work today, I'll come over to your house.
Yeah, right.
Random guy I just met, and we hit it off really well. So
you're used to this kind of thing.
I am. Yeah. Yep. Good to go. Done it before.
The president was said. It's okay.
Yeah. I'm a veteran. So I end up doing that. I go, basically, I get off work. I hit him up, and we exchange phone numbers. And I'm like, hey, man, give me your address, and I'll be on over. And ever since then, it's been what we call a beautiful friendship.
Nice.
Nice. We went over there. We had a blast. Our faces hurt from laughing so hard. Putting the models together, and because he had a modeling background, he used to do the dioramas for the World War II planes.
I was going to say, okay, yeah,
all that stuff. So he was already really good at working with miniatures, but he had never worked with, I guess, wargaming miniatures before. So that was where the gap was, I guess. But so yeah, we're playing the game. We're having a great time teaching everybody how to play, and after that, it just kind of blew up. So like we started a league at the store because we really wanted other people to play with us. Start doing live demos. He's now a regular at the store telling people, hey, we play War Machine. It's super fun. And we had actually at our highest point, I think we had maybe, I want to say like 22 people in the league at one time.
Wow.
He had grabbed a whole bunch of people from his command. He was in the Navy. Yep. And he was like, hey, you work with me. You're kind of cool and I like you enough. You should play this game. and then everybody starts coming to the store, and we're all actually friends now. That's the greatest part.
That's awesome.
All, like 8 of us out of those original like 20 some odd people are really close friends.
Yeah.
We hang out. We play D&D. We play Fate. We play war games. We do all of it together.
Nice.
So
yeah.
It turned out to be a really cool thing.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. Like some of the best friends that I have, I met sitting around a table.
Yeah,
like
100%.
there's just something about the gaming side of it where it's not just you're not just sitting around and playing Monopoly. You're not just sitting around and playing a game. Like there's an exchange that goes on.
Yeah,
especially if you do get into the TTRPG types too, where
yeah.
you're role playing. Like all of us got trauma, and it's coming out on that table.
Sure is,
right?
Sure is. Oh man,
I think we've been the best therapy for each other. For the most part,
right?
So yeah.
I always tell people I don't think that human beings play games to win. I think we play games to interact with people on a more personal level.
Absolutely.
And because the game is the median, then we don't have to stumble through awkward conversation just to hang out.
Yeah. We've had that talk like several times here, and that's kind of why like we do this, because this is what we love.
Yeah, of course.
And I mean, the people that we've met, I really my experiences do kind of trend towards the positive with people that I meet sitting around a table.
Absolutely. Right.
So,
and that's, if you trend positive and you think positive about the game, then the internet and the world can't bring you down out of things that you love.
Yeah.
That's the greatest part, because people will try 100%. They will definitely try.
So what made you make the move over to Warhammer? I mean, would you say right now you're probably, with your wargaming is predominantly Warhammer, or do you still play some of the others?
So that is a strange question, only in that I think we play things, I think board gamers are like that too, and even tabletop RPG people are like that. I think you shift between the things that you enjoy, and it depends on, I don't know, just like, I guess, where your tastes or where your group's tastes have shifted, if they have, right? So we've, right now, my personal group of friends that I was just talking about, we do predominantly play Warhammer now more than War Machine, but none of us got rid of our models.
No, still have them.
Yeah, we still have them. And we might have to re-ingratiate ourselves with a rule set or something here and there. But if you are already in the world, it's not hard, I don't think, too hard to move between rule sets when you've played so many hours into a game, you know?
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
So I think for right now, to answer your question, we do play a lot of Warhammer, but we definitely have our War Machine stuff. There's other minis games that we're always looking into. And I think it's whenever somebody brings up a topic like, hey, what do we want to do on all of our match days off? We'll just play some Fate, or bring our Warhammer stuff, or bring our Magic, or and where everybody's prepared depending on whose house we're going over.
Gotcha.
So it's real cool.
That sounds awesome. Having a group like that can shift. We have a D&D group that's played pretty regularly every week for 3 years now.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah.
That's intense. I had ran a game for almost that long, actually, until it finally ended. But yeah, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, and then I have a friend of mine that she runs a lot of. She's my consummate DM, Leslie, that's been on.
Yeah.
So we have some shifting that goes on, but I did like with the wargaming. Like everybody that's listened knows that I just got into this PAX this year, and it was the Kill Team version of it. Right. And they just offered me such a good deal.
You said you got it half off because you did some laser tag?
It was after your performance of the laser tag. That was really what it was.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
So they had this little curtained off area, and you could see like the lights and stuff going and stuff over by where they do like the concessions. And they're like, yeah, if you come over here and play, it's like $10 to get a ticket or something. If you were a Warhammer Plus member or something, you get one for free.
Oh shit, man!
So
No.
Yeah, right. I didn't even know what Warhammer Plus was.
Exactly. Right.
Well, here's your $10.
Nice.
So they got me with like, yeah, go play over there, play the laser tag, and then they'll give you a ticket to come back, and it'll be 50% off. And it was the one with the it's that one right there. Oh yeah.
Oh, Octarius.
Octarius.
Hell yeah, Octarius, man. Krieg. God, so cool.
Right. So we went over there and gave them the thing, and they walked in like, all right, like, who wants to be, like, you can either be Imperium or Orc, and I was just kind of like, I'm going Orc. So I just feel like I felt like it fit, but they gave them like it looked like the las gun, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And it had like a sensor that you had to clip on to your lanyard, and that was you had clipped on the front and one clipped on the back of your lanyard. So that's how they could score hits and stuff. And it had like a button to reload, and the las gun reloaded really quickly.
Oh man, look at that!
Yeah, the orcs I was given, your typical orc gun, like
your shooter.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. There's no way this damn thing would have worked in real life.
Oh no,
yeah, but I believe
absolutely.
So I was good.
Yes, 100%.
But it took longer to reload. It took like 7 seconds to reload when you hit the button.
Dial-up's faster,
right? Jesus.
You did believe in that part.
Yeah, you did believe hard enough.
So I went into this. I'm thinking, all right, cool. Like, we're in the middle of con. This is like day 2 of con, and it was the Saturday. It was the big day, and I was like, all right, man. Like, you played laser tag before.
Absolutely.
Don't get crazy.
No, yeah.
They're gonna. If you lose, you still get the discount.
100. So yeah, I'm just here for the time.
Right.
I'm here for a good time.
And the timer went off, and I forgot all of that speech.
Yep. You were trying to kill.
Oh my god, I was destroying the Imperium.
Oh yeah,
we won by a lot. I just want to.
You want to put that out there for everybody?
Yeah, right. And I'm walking out like I'm drenched. Like Josh and Marie were waiting for me when I came out, and they were just like, have fun. Like oh yeah,
Yeah, you should have looked them dead in the face and said it was an awful time. I'll never do it again.
I'm walking out and like I'm getting my 50% off coupon, and then the girl behind me who was Imperium walks out and they gave her one. I was like, what are you doing?
You didn't earn that.
Yeah, get your ass back in there.
You lose the same amount of calories I did from my Fitbit, and we'll talk.
Right? Yeah. So I got it. Like, but I was like, I've been interested in it for a while, just because like the models and the lore behind it, and everything was big for me. Like,
Yeah.
even with like Dungeons and Dragons, I think the thing that has kept me in as a D&D player has been the lore for years. Like,
Oh, yeah.
like I'm a big Salvatore fan.
As you should be.
Yeah, right.
100%.
His new books, like the new one's coming out at the end of this year, but like last year he released one like at the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Which we might be going for. Hashtag Hot Draft Summer #2.
I mean, it didn't catch on the first
It didn't
time.
catch on the first time.
Let's run it back again.
Run that back one more time.
But that was the stuff that I loved, was the stories that came out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd walk past the Warhammer booth and stuff, and I'm like, man, that just looks like everything looks awesome.
It's
and then
the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I said, that gilded curtain.
yeah,
You have no idea. You kind of want to ask, but you don't want your friends to see you, kind of thing. Like, I don't know why it's so secret.
the first experience I had with Warhammer was somebody, I don't even remember who it was. It was after a D&D game, and I think it was one of my first D&D games. It was 3rd edition. Didn't know what I was doing yet, and they were like, "Hey, what do you want to play?" And I was like, "I'm going to be this." And I was like, "I think it's an elf." And they're like, "All right, cool, be an elf." And we got to the point, and he's like, "Okay, describe yourself." And I described myself, and everybody goes, "That's a dwarf." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever, dude.
Yeah. Sure, man.
Call it whatever."
Yeah. Just don't
and-
call me late for dinner.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The guy was like, "Hey, maybe you should read this book," and he gave me Gotrek and Felix.
Oh, so good.
Right?
What a great one.
I feel like you would enjoy this, and that was my first. And I didn't even put 2 and 2 together for the longest time.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
why
that was a Warhammer thing?
Right?
Oh, fair enough.
Until I'm looking one day and I'm like, "Oh, that's the same thing. Look at that."
Look at that.
And it was just that gritty, dark. I mean, everything.
Yeah,
in
everything's
the
horrible.
universe is- yeah.
It's pretty,
There are no good guys.
it's pretty bleak.
There's no good guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my first experience with it, bringing that into it. So like us, we're not, like I said, we were TTRPG board games, like we were all over that.
Yeah.
And stuff. Do you feel like there's more of kind of like a barrier for people? Because I think what a lot of people see when they see wargaming is they see those massive tables of 2,000-point armies.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that I feel like that scares a lot of people away, because they're like, that looks like a lot of money, or that looks like a lot of time painting.
It's so, and they're not wrong. Well, that's I guess that's the greatest part about it, and the worst part about it at the same time, is that wargaming is the only facet, at least in my time on this earth, that I've been into the hobby, right? I've noticed that is the only hobby where if other people are watching you do it and they don't know what they're looking at, it is one of the most intimidating things ever, because their ignorance is paralyzing.
Sure.
They have no idea where to even start, but they see you having fun, or they assume that you are.
Right.
Because why else would you be here doing this? So that's the itch, right, that they can't scratch, is that how do I have fun like them, but I don't also want to, or they don't know what they don't want.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest
Right.
part, right?
Yeah.
So yes, to answer your question, I think there is a stigma or an intimidation factor if you're in person. I'll say that. The advent of the internet and YouTube has made wargaming a lot more, I guess I would say, new customer friendly or new person friendly.
Sure.
Because a lot of these companies, not just Games Workshop, but Privateer Press does
Yeah.
a really good job of the people who make War Machine and Monster Apocalypse and some of those other games. They put out a lot of YouTube channel stuff for free for people, like painting classes, or like technique work, and like lore introductions and stuff like that. They do a lot of that to kind of soften the blow, to let people know it's like, hey, you keep seeing our banners everywhere, and you know kind of what we are, but this is actually it in a 2 to 7 minute super digestible format.
Yeah, I think that's happened across the board too, with like TTRPGs. I mean, look at the way Dungeons and Dragons has just exploded over the past 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
Because people are finally able to see what it actually looks like to play Dungeons and Dragons. It's not like that old 8-bit sketch, that they did where it's, Dungeons and
The 8-bit
Dragons,
D&D?
Satan's game.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
people are actually able to see what it looks like. And I
Right.
think that's a huge benefit for all gaming right now, is that it's no longer something that happens if you know that guy who happens to have all the stuff.
Correct.
Like, everybody now there are avenues to get into whatever you want. I know my first experience seeing like tabletop wargaming was down in Greenville, South Carolina. There was a comic book shop and it was huge. The whole back of the comic book store was wargaming tables. They had 12 of them back there.
Jeez.
Like full size, like huge tables. Each one was a different type of terrain and stuff.
Oh,
like,
they're taking it super serious.
Oh yeah, like
oh, yeah.
the owner, like that was his thing. So the whole half of the comic shop was all wargaming stuff, models, miniatures, everything you could ever want. And then they had that in the back, and then the rest of it was all just comic books and stuff. His store was basically the things he liked.
Yeah,
and that's what it was. Yeah,
that's awesome. Though.
Yeah, but and we would go there like on a weekend or something. They'd run tournaments, and it would be slammed back in that back.
I believe it.
And you'd walk over and you'd see, and there'd be dudes with like, I mean, the table would be full of miniatures. And then there would be like a bunch of dice being rolled all over the place. And I'm sitting there going, man, I don't have any idea where to even start with this. But yeah, that's, I really do think the internet has really made avenues for people who, if you want to find out about something, if you want to get into a new hobby, if you just want to test the waters with it, like you can find like introductory stuff and just a couple videos here and there to really help you get into it.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree, Josh, because like there's a lot of I guess stigma early on, but let's say before right around YouTube time, but no businesses are really doing like big advertisement stuff yet. So I think it was like right at the end of 3 for D&D, like 3.0, going into 4, where there was like a massive like launch of like these commercials, or like you would see things on TV where it's like, oh, check out D&D at your local hobby store.
Yep.
And they would do like these plugs here and there, and they weren't long. It was just like a flash of a poster.
Right.
And then they would have Wizards of the Coast, little logo at the bottom. And then people were like, oh, what's, D&D? My grandma told me that D&D is a bunch of guys wearing Ku Klux Klan robes in someone's basement and they're summoning the devil. Like,
yeah.
And then it's like, well, why are they showing this at a store and they have kids playing in the background?
Yep.
And you're like, that can't be Satan. There's kids.
Yeah, right? Little did we know they're really the worst.
They are actually Satan.
Yeah, right? We grew up pretty strict Baptist.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you
about.
too?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And I like when I was born, our parents were really kind of young. They had just found white baby Jesus
laying in someone's yard.
Yeah. So they were kind of new to it and stuff. But we got like 11 years between us. My parents were going to make sure this one turned out okay, I guess.
Fair. Yeah, sure.
But yeah, like the only thing, like I said, we've talked about before, the only thing I remember when I was little about it was like I had a cousin who lived in Indianapolis, and he wore all black and never came out of his room. It's because he played D&D, and I was just like, oh, really? Sounds horrific.
Just because he rolled some dice, you are now a follower of chaos.
And I always loved it. They were always talking like, yeah, like it's just so horrible. The players give their agency over to the DM, and I'm like, you have players that'll listen to a DM?
Yeah, show me where. First of all, where's that group?
Right. Looking back now, after having played D&D, I'm like, man, I'd actually love to play with that group.
Yeah, those devil worshippers are having a great time.
You got a chalice? Shit. How much did you pay for that prop?
God, what was that saying from it was like a Dateline NBC spot on like the dangers of D&D, like in like the 90s, where they said the path to hell is paved with D6s, and you're like, are you for real?
Yeah, right. First of all, any good gamer knows it'd be D4s.
100%.
Yeah, right.
Second of all, I used to have, I know I don't have it anymore, but I used to have a copy of that really well-known like Christian tract that came out that was all about the people who were playing D&D and how they like gave their soul to the devil or whatever. Oh. I had a physical copy of it. I wish I knew what happened to it.
Oh my god! Now I want to find that just so I can frame it and hang it in the game room.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't remember it. I mean, it was when I was super young, when I was in one of those Christian schools. But I remember getting it. I don't even remember where, but yeah. Now I looked it up the other day because I guess I was feeling nostalgic. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was like, good. This is ridiculous. How can anybody who's ever come anywhere close to like brushing the outskirts of what the game actually is?
Oh yeah.
Would know that it's crazy.
Right. Yeah. That part of it, and like I said, our mother moved in with me year and a half ago now.
Okay.
It's been a while. I don't know. we've had a rocky transition sometimes.
I get it.
Yeah, but we do really well. Like we get along well and stuff. But there were times where she would listen to us playing and stuff, and she was like, "I heard you guys talking about like demons." Now, granted, I'm running like Descent into Avernus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you can't not.
Right? We're like Wizards of the Coast is like satanic. I'll show you a satanic panic. We're going to the first level of hell, no matter what, baby.
They were like, hey, if we're going to rip the Band-Aid off, it might as well be in one foul swoop.
Right.
And just do nothing but demons.
So, yeah.
Love it.
So I was like, no, it's like, I mean, it's me and Josh.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the closest thing we're getting to a demon is bad gas. Like, seriously.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying you're warned.
Yeah,
You're warned.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that whole ridiculousness that went on. I mean, because I know, like, especially, both sides of Warhammer, because there is the fantasy side, the Age of Sigmar, is that
That is
the
what it's
official-
called now, yeah.
Okay.
So Age of Sigmar is relatively new, I guess, as far as you would consider the lore, the breadth of the lore,
Yeah.
and how things have changed. For a long time, for almost 30 plus years, it was Warhammer Fantasy.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Warhammer Fantasy was this, they call it the old world now, but even when you were in it, it was called the old world, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But
They didn't have a great concept of time.
yeah, it's just old.
Right.
You're born, you're old.
Right. Yeah.
So it was called the Old World, and it had, there was a million stories, fantastic stories, awesome characters, great struggles between all these armies, because there is no good guys and there's no bad guys. People were allowed to fall in love with whoever they wanted to, as far as the faction was concerned, and believe strongly in their propaganda.
Yeah, right.
Because that's all it really is. In 40K, Age of Sigmar, and in Warhammer Fantasy, because the moral compass is broken. There's a lot of people who will buy into their own armies, basically buy into their own shit.
Yeah, right? Yes.
Because you're like, yeah, of course, I love them, so I believe everything they're saying is true.
Oh, yeah. I won't even get started on the love that I already have for the sisters.
Oh, yeah. God,
Like-
it's so rad.
Like, I'm a pretty devout atheist. Like, agnostic, atheist really on my militant days.
Okay.
But, like, the sisters just being like, we have faith, and that's all we need. And, like, they aren't bullshitting about it.
No, they're
Like,
not. It's real.
But I am actually making miracles happen because I believe that strongly.
Strongly.
I'm like, man, I just love these bitches. This
Yeah.
is what I want to do.
The greatest part, I think, about sisters, and just like what you said, is that it's kind of like how the orcs are.
Yeah.
Their faith for the sisters, their faith is, having miracles manifest themselves, not even daily, but like hourly.
Yeah.
So the more it happens, the more they're like, oh, this is real to us. So there's no room for their faith to be shaken.
Yeah.
Because it just keeps happening. And the orcs are like, well, if all of it, they're the most potent psychic force in all the known universe, and they're too stupid to realize it. So if they all believe hard enough that red will make a vehicle move faster, then it will, because they all do, and it'll see it happen, and it reinforces their belief in it. It's
Exactly.
wild.
Yes, I love that. I found one of the podcasts that I just found, and I'll give them a shout out, is Adeptus Ridiculous.
Yeah, those guys are hilarious.
I love those guys. I went to their merch store, and they have the hoodie, and it's got like the orc like peeking over the words, and it's just, I'm a tank, I'm a tank, I'm a tank.
Yes. So, I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Have you seen the video of that
No,
somebody has made?
I read the story. I haven't watched the video yet. I heard it was out there though, and I just haven't looked it up.
Oh man, it's just exactly what you think it is. It's I think it's like an excerpt from their podcast, but it's somebody animated it very, very cartoonily.
Okay,
and
yeah.
it's just a bunch of orcs, like you said, piled together, and they are all saying under their breath, "I'm a tank, I'm a tank, I'm a tank, I'm a tank, I'm a tank." And as they're getting shot at, nothing's happening to them. They're not dying. Missiles are flying all over their heads, and they're just steadily just chugging across this board. It's wild.
That's yeah. For those of you that don't follow yet or are not interested, that is one of the things from the orcs from 40K is they have this thing where if they believe it, it happens. It's a psychic ability that they have probably from like way back that just has manifested through.
Oh yeah.
So
if you have more time, we can go in all of
yeah, I was gonna say we might do a couple segments later on where we just like break it down. But it's one of the things that I love about them.
Yeah.
Like, or like you said, orcs believe that the color red makes things go faster. And I've heard stories where there was a group of Astaris, which is the Space Marines, chasing orcs, and they were the Blood Angels, who wear an all red armor. So the orcs were like, they're gonna catch us. So it happened,
100%.
But even their guns, their ships, their technology, none of it would actually work.
No.
But they believe that it works, so it works. Like that, that field of manifestation. That was one of the things I think that kind of brought me over to it. That was like, man, that's it. I give up. I got to try. Like,
right.
You
just have to.
Like, I know there was just so much. I was like, it looks so big and it looks intimidating. I started reading the lore, and like I said before, like I'm a lore guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's what's going to get me. And yeah, absolutely. I think it was Wes Hammer. It was TikTok, and he kept coming up and being like, Warhammer 40K, stories and stuff. And I think he got to the one with like, let's talk about one of the most violent weapons in the universe, the chainsword. And I was like,
yeah.
Come in.
I'm in it. You mean to tell me that there's a guy who is about 8 to 13 feet tall, already in armor, walking around, and he has a chainsaw with a handle to kill people with? I'm in it.
Yeah.
What else?
Right?
What else you got? Like, this is it.
Did the wargaming side of it, because I know like the Satanic Panic is kind of that's kind of a staple in D&D history.
Oh, of course, yeah.
For those of us that are old enough to remember it, like we look back on it and we're like, see, people can be dumb.
Yeah.
And for the younger generation, they're just kind of like,
Yeah, they're like, oh, how did that happen? You're like, you just had to live it.
yeah, right.
You
You had to be there. You had to be there. Does the wargaming side? Because specifically for Warhammer, both of them very heavily lean into the chaos powers and the darkness, and like demons are real.
Oh yeah,
and they will come eat you and do horrible things to you.
it's weird to say if it was ever too big of a problem, because obviously Games Workshop and Warhammer didn't slow down; it only sped up.
Right,
and other war games too. Like I keep talking about War Machine because that's one of the that's like the other most prevalent one that people will know about if you talk about wargaming in any capacity for the most part. They have a lot of religious, iconography and undertones and a lot of stuff in games because it's a motivating factor to relate to human beings, right? Because religion is a big part of most people's day to day. Even if you're not a religious person, you're still going to drive past a church or you're going to see something. So it's an association tool that lends itself for really good stories and lore development for setting up your protagonists and shifting the social norm. So a lot of times in some of these Warhammer stories, the guys who are running the church for whatever reason in any system or any lore turn out to be the bad guys, whereas you have the guys who kind of look edgy and sharp and kind of evil turn out to be the good guys, and it really gets you more engaged in whatever story you're reading or listening to because it's the shift in the norm.
Sure, yeah, I can see that. And yeah, from what I've read, when I started this, I poured through a bunch of books. I did the first 3 in the Horus Heresy.
Yeah, oh god, you got to,
because everybody's like, that's where you got to start. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever. So yeah, and then like since then have been like podcasts and just books and stuff, and like reading about where they were in the 30th millennia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where the emperor's like, hey, religion's crazy, knock it off, don't be doing any of that shit.
Yeah,
10,000 years later, everybody's praying to the emperor, and if you go, man, I don't know if he's really a god. Bad things will happen to you.
They will hurt you.
If you live, it's going to be as a servitor.
Yeah.
Like all your brain's just going to be mushed out, and they're just going to use you as a meat puppet for something, right?
And that's like the horrific reality of just normal life, at least in the universe of Warhammer 40,000.
Yeah,
I'll say that one. Age of Sigmar is a little bit more. I wouldn't. People like to think, and these are the people on the internet, of course, and people who just hate things to hate things because people are having fun. Are like, oh, Age of Sigmar is not grim dark, blah blah. I want my old Warhammer fantasy back. And if you read some of the stories in Age of Sigmar, I mean, there are whole clans of people being eaten alive because it's a Tuesday and the demons caught up to them.
Yes,
and they are praying for Stormcast, who are the main protagonists in that game, to just show up, and they're off having to deal with a million other things that are just as horrible. So I think the grittiness and the grimdark, or the stories that are more sad than good, appeal to people because life is hard.
Yeah.
Our real lives are hard.
Yeah.
So we want to relate to someone who's having it way worse than we are, to be like, oh, well, at least I'm not that guy who's, chopping up, people into Soylent Green cubes and feeding them to, factory workers. And then that guy eats that little bar of grandma and then falls underneath a tractor that kills him.
Yeah, right? Right.
And that was his life.
It could be worse. It could be worse.
It could be worse.
Yeah, and I still see it. Like I said, I did the Gotrek and Felix novels. I've done a couple other that I've spaced out from there. Even the fantasy Age of Sigmar side, like, whereas, 40K has a very definite feel to it. Like, there is no good guy. Like, the closest thing you can say to like having a good faction is like the Tyranids, because they're just following their natural drive to eat everything.
That's it. Yeah, they are driven by nature.
Yeah, so they don't really have evil intentions. But even on the other side of it, like I said, reading into it, it wasn't I don't think it's as in your face as the 40K side of it.
It's very
is.
subtle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Yeah, like, but don't fall in love with the character if it's not a main character.
Yeah, don't you do it.
Don't do it.
It's just like Game of Thrones out in this bitch. It's wild.
Something bad is going to happen to them. Like,
yeah.
I can guarantee, even if they don't die, like they're messed up for like 3 books.
Horribly maimed.
Yeah.
Or fall to chaos a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, and have to get saved out of that, and then they're forever changed. Dudes out here going bald because they were exposed to too much like magic. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah. So anybody that says that, it's like, oh, that's not dark enough. It's like, you ain't reading, dude.
Yeah, you're reading the wrong stuff.
Either that or you, I don't know. Maybe comprehension's not your thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Right. So, but yeah, I mean, because like I said, I know we've taken it and the TTRPG side of it. And of course, since we've learned that it's, since we've really gotten into playing and stuff, it's like, all right, that was silly. Like,
It was. Yeah.
I've got Vampire the Masquerade.
Oh, yeah.
I've got, like there's all sorts of TTRPGs that come out there that go a little bit deeper and a little bit darker into it.
It was what, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
Way back in the day.
Oh my gosh.
Was the one that everybody was like, all right, hide your kids, hide your wife. They're out here summoning tentacle monsters.
Right.
And not in my Christian suburbia. You won't.
What is it? Delta Green is the game system that I've played that is a Cthulhu type.
Yeah.
Yeah, like weird stuff happens, and you actually have a madness scale that you're keeping track of.
And it's so fun to do that.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Yeah, because you're dipping into that. Like, I mean, as much as we all pass as normal, I think we've all got a little bit, like, all the people that I've ever dealt with and, like, have been like, we could be friends.
Yeah.
There's some dark weird in there somewhere. For
Oh, we're
everybody.
broken.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're some broken people. Trauma out the ass.
And again, that's where I think the gaming comes in. Is like, man, that's our therapy.
It is.
This
is what, so we don't, show up on Wavy News 10 because we murdered someone. Because I got to murder some orcs with my Space Marines, or I got to, to do a shameless plug again for another minis game that we want to get into, or at least I'm into on the model side of things, called Wild West Exodus.
Yeah.
Because I'm Native American.
Okay.
So we're seeing representation in games is also really hard, even from a fantasy, world.
Yeah.
It's hard to relate. So you almost relate to classes more than races.
Sure.
I feel.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to do this thing regardless of what species I am. I still get to do the job.
Sure.
And that's what at least a lot of our group is like to. They like to relate more to the profession than the race.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes they go hand in hand. Like elf rangers. Yes, I agree. Human paladins. Sure.
Right.
Like totally get it. But so in Wild West Exodus, it is another weird history switch, right? So it is the time of the pioneers and the native tribes out west. I'm a Eastern Woodlands Native American from the Rappahannock tribe, so different culture shift, but
Sure.
Still Native Americans, right? So in their version of history, the Civil War never happened. What took place in between the Civil War was called the what was it called? It was called the Nations. It's like the 5 Nations Uprising.
Okay.
So it was all the native tribes of the West, the Comanche, the Cheyenne, the Apache. They all banded together and became 5 separate great nations who militarized, found gunpowder and like repeaters and stuff, and started making combinations of like nature mixed with machinery weapons. Okay. And they had like these cyborg werewolves, and it's fucking rad. Yeah, it had like bandit factions in it, and like Union Army was, one too, because I was in this little time period for it. But essentially their struggle was trying to capture territory in the United States, because it wasn't actually the United States. It was just a ramshackle of random territories that are being fought over all the time. So that's the backdrop for Wild West Exodus. That it takes place it's cowboys and Indians, but add cyborgs and weird Martians and magic.
Yeah. See that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this. We just got this delivered. This was a Kickstarter that we backed.
Whoa, look at that.
It is a TTRPG called Coyote and Crow. For those of you not sitting in the room.
Yeah, be jealous, because I am. No. Oh, this is awesome. Look at this.
It is it was written, designed, built from the ground up by a team that is all indigenous people, Native American. The artists are all Native American, and it takes place in a version of the Americas where Europe never sent anybody over. There was never any colonization. So,
oh, wow.
The indigenous people here were able to just build their own culture. and it takes place in the future. So
sick.
Yeah, so we're already way past that.
Cyberpunk Native America. Let's do it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like this is one I can't wait to read through this so I can get good at it and run it.
Invite me over.
Absolutely.
We're doing it.
We just got this in. It was a Kickstarter that we backed. It was just one of those programs like, man, you got to throw money at this. Like, this is definitely a thing.
That's awesome. I did not hear about it. I'm actually sad about it. Is it available for purchase now?
I believe it is. When we get done, remind me. I'll look it up.
Yeah,
I think they're still putting it out. They just got it out. Like I said, just got it pushed out. There's a great message in it at the beginning, because one of the things that I've worried about from just that standpoint, like I said, white people screw stuff up. So we do.
I think we all screw things up, but hey. You guys have a track record.
We do.
We're doing real well now, though.
We're trying. Some of us are trying. There's a message in here. It's like a message to new players, and they do have one. It's a message to Native American players. It's like, hey, if you do have part of your culture that you want to incorporate into your character and into this, like, please feel free to do that. Like, this is a book that we wrote for us, kind of thing that we're sharing with the rest of the world.
That is so cool.
Then there's another message to non-Native American players, like, hey, if you think you want to like take like modern day culture that you think you know and put it in there, don't fucking do that. I love it. We put everything in this book that you need to play in this world right here.
Yeah, this is it.
And that's all you need to worry about. Don't try, like, I know you watch Dances with Wolves and you think you're an expert and stuff.
Oh my God,
don't do
Costner, no.
Right? That may not be exactly what they say in there, but that's what the message is. It's like, hey, just play the book. That's what we're asking you to do as somebody that's sharing our love with you and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you definitely will have to check that out. I thought you'd be interested in that.
What a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, man. Totally down for it. Thank you for showing me that. I will throw money at that.
Absolutely. I'll get you their information.
Yeah.
So for new people, could maybe be intimidated or maybe not ready or not sure how they want to get into it.
We got all the way off track.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's what we do here.
Fair enough.
There are no rails.
Yeah, hell yeah. Maglev, let's do it.
What do you say to them? What's your advice?
To
if they're interested in getting in the hobby, but they're like, where do I start?
So, I think the best thing now, being a little bit older and being into wargaming as long as I have, and interacting with so many different people, either in a business sense as someone who is owning a business or trying to work it as a job,
right,
or as not on the clock, just hanging out with friends, doing stuff at a store and hanging out. I think the biggest thing that any of us who already participate in the hobby is just letting people know that it's not scary. Like, just having that conversation of being like, if you see someone at a store who's interested in something that you're interested in, don't be afraid to approach them politely. And let them know. It's like, hey, I see you looking at some Space Marines, man. Like, what are you thinking about? And he's like, oh, and you always get those guys who are like, I wasn't really looking at that. I'm just kind of in this. It's like, hey, boo-boo, it's okay.
Right.
I do this too.
Right.
And it's usually 9 times out of 10, as soon as that happens, walls come down and they're like, oh, well, yeah, it is cool, man. But like, what is this? And then you go through your spiel and you let them know. So I think it's just the existing community needs to feel... Well, they don't need to, but I invite us to feel more friendly when you're out in public, or when you see people who have questions, or or people who are like watching your game. Like, if you're in the middle of a game, it's feel free to like tell your opponents, like, hey man, do you mind pausing real quick? This guy looks like he's interested. Let's go grab him.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay.
The aggressive politeness is the key. Is letting people know that everything's okay. You can join this too. And if you have any questions, either I can answer them, or if it's something that I don't know, we'll find the answer.
The geek community at large.
Oh boy, let's talk. Let's talk about this.
Social skills were never anything that any of us rolled high on, right?
Oh yeah.
I won't say. I think that, I know from our side, like I said, from like the TTRG side and stuff, like Critical Role, I think probably did more by being pretty people that played D&D.
Yeah, and first of all, where do they get off? All being just gorgeous creatures,
right?
And playing our game.
You obviously all came out great looking, Travis, you could lift a small truck.
Yeah. That guy's real strong.
And then you guys come in here and take this too?
Yeah. We have nothing left. All we have is weird body odor and medical problems.
And I think that's a lot of, right? That's where a lot of the community, a lot of them, I know when that first started, they were kind of like, well, what do we have now? It's like, whoa. There's plenty of room, guys.
Oh yeah.
And I think that has brought so many other people that were like, oh man, geeks play D&D. And now I've had people say that to me and then come back to me like weeks, months later, go like, hey man, I heard you know how to teach D&D. Yeah, I do.
And it's always so secretive, though.
Right?
Is that, why is that still a thing?
It is. There's still this stigmatism around it.
Yeah.
Just, you know, and I'm pretty open about it. Like, I mean, we have like our logo and stuff that we have. Like,
Yeah.
I wear my lanyard to work and I got my hat on all the time and
Hell
stuff.
yeah.
And if people talk to me, I'll be like, yeah, do you want to talk gaming? I'll talk gaming.
Let's do it.
My whole team at work has our lanyard, okay?
That's awesome. I have it as well. It's hanging up in my car right now, actually.
Nice.
I'm just like, you know what? Why not let's see this and have more people ask? Because I definitely want to give you guys exposure, man.
I
This is
appreciate that. We do. But I mean, I'm a 43-year-old man. I'm gonna do what the hell I want to do.
You don't look a day over 82.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Being in the Navy for 20 years will do that to me. I got parts that are broken. The doc's like, that's supposed to be good for another 20 years. Like, well, the warranty's up, doc.
Yeah, don't you want? It's all done. We'll just gauze you up. It's fine.
But yeah, I mean, I'm an adult, and I have adult money, and I'm going to spend it on the things that I want. And
Right.
the whole thing is changing. I think everybody is learning, you know, that we can enjoy what we want to enjoy, and it doesn't, you know, you don't have to feel like you're an outcast or something to get on that.
It's like, it's cool to be a nerd now.
Yeah.
Like, for lack of a better term. I know we at least me and my group of friends, we say it all the time because we see more, like, I mean, look at Disney Plus.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
look at all of what Star Wars has done now. Like,
Yeah.
look at all the kids running around with, like, you know, backpacks and action figures, and they're not getting immediately shit stomped,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, by the other kids. And you see it, this, like, a weird shift in, like, kids are growing up now with D&D being normal,
Yeah.
or being
Yeah.
done in the
They
house,
absolutely
or
are.
even like board games. Like, it is not uncommon to see people who are having board game nights,
Yeah.
and advertising them around town and being like, hey, come join us, total strangers, opening their homes for people to play Ticket to Ride and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Monopoly, and then they're getting into like stuff like Zombicide with like maybe some minis involved, and they're like, oh, let's paint these because I heard about that Warhammer thing, and everybody's doing everything,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah, we like I said, we're big fans of, you know, everybody having a seat at the table, and you know, whatever you love can be something that can be shared. And there's such a great part of this community. I think we still have our issues.
Of course, no, we're
You
not
know,
perfect.
Yeah, which I caveat because at some point a lot of people may hear this and go like, oh yeah, well what about slow down?
Yeah, calm down.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, we
I
get
got it. There's definitely some problems out there that we're working on. Wizards of the Coast this year has done a lot as far as the race question.
I heard about that,
Indeed,
actually. Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't know how, to the extent of what had happened or what made them do the move. I know that a lot of things in pop culture, or just in entertainment, I guess I would say broad scope entertainment, is the move for more inclusivity.
Sure.
And you know, letting people know it's like, hey, if you don't feel represented, here is this comic book, or here's this new character, or here's this show even.
Yeah.
That is trying to touch that. And there's some parts of it that are good and
Yeah.
tasteful and very like, wow, that's breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
some of it is not so much.
Sure.
And forced.
Yeah,
So
right.
We're, like you said, we're still figuring that part out too, but it's weird to see it in geek and nerd culture, because I at least grew up, you know, and like you guys said, with a lot of D&D and tabletop stuff where there are elves and
Right.
orcs and dragonborn and, you know, halflings, and the racism in fantasy worlds is like, oh, well, you know, I can relate to that because I've seen that in my life, or unfortunately I've had that happen in my life. And you can relate to it there, and you're like, well, in a fantasy world, at least they can do something about it.
Sure.
I'm not even saying like resorting to violence, but it's like, you know, you have whole wizard councils who are like, hey, you get one wish because you've completed this quest for us. What would that wish be? And you have players who are openly being like, hey, I want halflings to not be oppressed anymore by the hill folk.
Sure.
And then that wish is granted, and you're like, wow, we did something.
Yeah,
like
right.
it's real.
Yeah.
And it's a really good feeling to take you out of reality for a minute as either a person of color, or even somebody of different nationality, different culture entirely. These fantasy worlds are like a homogeny where people can all come together, be these different races, do these different jobs, go on these fantastic quests, and work together instead of arguing about, I don't like orcs because they did this to my people way back in the day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And I think that's a lot of what they tried to do. Like, they removed a lot of the restrictions. Like, if you're making a character, it used to be that, all right, well, you get this bonus and this bonus. well, yeah, I get strength and con because I'm a dwarf, but like, what if it's more of a bookish dwarf? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What if he's a nerd?
Right? What if we got that nerd?
Nerd dwarf.
So they let you move those around and stuff now, where
That's
they kind of
cool.
freed stuff up, so you can come up with a character that the one that you're picturing in your head, which is probably a lot like you somewhere. Like it's a facet of probably what you are or who you are. So that's pretty cool. Like with the wargaming side of it, I mean, I know a lot of it's like minis on a map type thing.
Sure.
So
At
like,
its core, yeah.
Yeah. Because I have heard the discussion around female Astartes.
Oh boy.
Is that
Let's open that can.
is that a thing?
Hold on, boys. I don't know how much time you've got. I will say that while the internet has done all that great stuff that we talked about earlier, while bringing more awareness to that we even exist, that this culture exists of people playing games and interacting with each other, with miniatures, with board games, with cards, however you have your geek fun, the internet let people know about it more. What the internet also did, created these places called Reddit, and these other places called 4chan, and some other
pretty sure those are actually
vicious hives of scum and villainy. Where, because you have a bandwidth and you pay for your internet, you automatically assume everybody deserves to hear your opinion.
Yeah.
And that's where the female Space Marine thing started. It's because there are people in any lore, D&D, with movies, Marvel, whatever. Pick a thing that people love, right? They loved it because of the stories. Just like you said, if we had no miniatures in Warhammer and all we had was the Black Library, which is the place where they produce all the stories
right,
and the books,
the novels,
it would still have just as much, if not more, of a following, because that's the substance. We can have these plastic pieces, but if we don't know where they're from or what their motivations are, they almost don't mean anything.
Exactly. You're not as tied to those.
So because people are tied to stuff so much and they love an established lore that they have fallen into and they really care about it, they're very
protective over.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
It's overprotective and defensive because to them it's like, I love this thing and it either saved me from a bad time in life or it was there for me when other people weren't, what have you. And it doesn't even have to be that dark. Maybe it's just, I love Space Marines being dudes. Why the hell they got titties now? Like, and me freaking out about it.
Exactly. Like, they make such. I've heard so many comments about, well, how can you make boob armor? I'm like,
just come on. It's like you just round that bitch over like the same ones that they're already wearing.
I was gonna say, I don't know if you've seen any of the drawings I've seen, but most of those dudes got some pretty big tits too. Like, I mean, the Astaris are not little dudes.
No,
there's plenty of room in there.
There's
plenty of room.
And and that is, I don't even think that's the core of the issue. Mm-hmm. I think it comes up when people are, like I said, very passionate. And that passion can sometimes be turned into some gatekeeping and some over defensiveness on shit that's not real. Let's also ground ourselves.
I was going to say, let's come back to that again.
Yeah, we're talking in a world where humanity has reached the stars and there are trillions upon trillions of human beings in a galaxy fighting trillions of other things that don't like us. And you're mad that some dude on a web forum somewhere said, oh, I would like female Space Marines. You're like, oh my God, you just get your shit together. And you're freaking out over something that is all fake.
Yeah. Right?
It
is still a fantasy. It is still an idea.
Yes.
Like, there's nothing wrong with growth. Like, have you read the stuff in there? Female Space Marines seem like so much less of a, not can ever happen thing than half the books I've already read. Are you serious?
But I mean, we talked about that in the same thing with the TTRPG side. When we were talking about the wheelchair.
Oh my God, the wheelchairs come back up too.
Yeah. We're talking about being inclusive and things like that to people with disabilities. And this one guy was talking about, well, why can't we have like a character be in a wheelchair? Like, I mean, you're talking about in science fiction, like in fantasy, you have magic. You can literally make fire come from your fingertips. I'm pretty sure we can figure out how to make a wheelchair work in a dungeon. Like,
yeah, I feel like our list of problems is way longer than the amount of time it would take to slap some wheels on a chair.
Right? Yeah. Oh my God. It's coming back up. Like, this discussion comes around about every 6 months right now.
Really?
Yeah.
This is a regular thing. Oh no.
And every time it's just like, really? God.
Yeah, and it brings me back to, if that is the thing that holds you up from allowing somebody else to enjoy the game, like, what are you doing with your life, man?
Seriously.
Like, just honestly, because to you, that might just be something you want to argue, but to the person who feels that they are finally represented in this game they love, Like, that is such a huge difference, and that's such a terrible thing to try and gatekeep, especially when, I mean, this hobby can be so rich for people.
Right. Yeah. Hey, you don't like wheelchairs? Let me show you pain machines. All right, we'll find a way around this.
Let me also show you Professor Xavier. Let's start there.
Oh my God. Yeah, right?
Arguably one of the greatest humanitarians who was not wholly human in any source of fiction, rode around in a fucking hover chair, right? Like, we can do it, guys.
Yeah,
I
right.
swear we can do it.
We got this. Like, really, just hit the I believe button on this one and let's go.
I know, yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so it's good that it's all of gaming, that we still gotta fight these silly fights for people that, you know, we all love what we do. But,
Yeah.
I mean, man, like, I love what I do playing with Josh, or, you know, playing with, you know, a group down the street, or anybody. Bring them all to the table. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care. Tell me a story about this wizard that you have an idea about, or this ranger that just happens to be, you know, doesn't have the use of their legs.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Tell me how that works.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
make that story for me.
That's the thing that I think that's what it comes from, though. It's like a lot of these stories and things that we like, and the entertainment that we find in these fantasy worlds and stuff like that, whether it be through tabletop RPGs, whether it be through miniature games, is because you found something that you've latched onto and you love it so much, right? That you kind of build yourself this world of what you think is cool without taking a step back sometimes to register that, hey, in order for you to have the max amount of fun that you want to have with these games, you do have to interact with other people. And they're not always going to agree with everything that you think is rad.
Sure. Yeah.
And you have to be an adult sometimes to just stand the fuck up, look them in the face, and say, hey, I respect your opinion, even though I don't agree with you.
Exactly. Yeah. We got to this point, guys. We're all adults now.
Yeah.
We all have adult money to throw into this.
And we all can go to adult jail if somebody doesn't know how to act.
Exactly. These are important things. I love the gaming community. I hope they're all following this right now. Pay attention, all right?
Yeah. This is important.
Awesome. Hey, man, like I said, it has been an absolute honor having you come over here and talk with us. Like I said,
really appreciate it, guys.
I know a lot of this, we've kind of talked just kind of the geek stuff in general and just gaming in general, man. But I like, if somebody's interested in doing the wargaming, like, I hope that there's something they heard that was like, okay, it's not that intimidating. It's not that big. Yeah, there are a lot of shelves and there's a lot of stuff on there, but I mean, you're not going to find, well, whether you love this or not, unless you go and, you know, throw your 2 cents in the ring and see how it goes.
You have to try it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And
Yeah.
if I were to say like a conclusive, I guess, statement for all of that, if you were a new person and you're listening to this and you've been wondering about wargaming for a while and you're on the fence for it, my best piece of advice I could give you is you have access to the internet in the palm of your hand. We have these phones that would blow people's minds from like the 1920s.
Oh,
we
right.
told them that we could look up the chemical makeup of carbon on my phone in 2 seconds. They would lose their shit.
Right.
So if you have access to such raw, powerful information, use that to your advantage. Google something that you're confused about, or if you just know a name of something. There are so many active resources out there from all these companies, and we should give them all their equal love. Games Workshop, Privateer Press, Fantasy Flight Games. There's probably going to be some that I'm missing in there because all the other developers, people who make Malifaux, the people who make BattleTech, the people who make up and coming minis games that are on Kickstarters and stuff like that, where they're still trying to do wargaming, but it's on a little bit of a board or what have you. Rage is one of them. If I can't remember that I Kickstarted and I'm still waiting for stuff, we'll see. But
we feel you. We feel you.
Yeah. But it is it's outstanding the amount of raw resources that we have that you can look up on your own. And then when you feel comfortable enough, or even if you don't want to look any of this up, go to support your local stores. Not me just saying that as a business owner myself, but like, go to your local stores because that's their job.
Yeah.
They wouldn't exist if somewhere in that building someone didn't have a passion and a love for what it is.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, yes, while customer service is a little lacking, in my oh so humble opinion, there's still going to be someone there, even if they don't work there, who is going to have the same amount of passion that you'd find somewhere else, to have all the time in the world to take their time with you, explain to you what it is, what you're looking at, what you're willing to get into on a starting budget,
right,
and where your next steps are. I'll say, at least because I work for the company there, that Games Workshop has all of these like start here sets, and getting started with, because they know that it's intimidating. Like we all didn't start with this.
No,
we had to get into it, and we all had our same apprehensions. And same thing, like Privateer Press used to send stores these little box foldouts that were like maybe 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet, and it was like 2 or 3 models, some dice, and a tape measure. And then it was like a quick, hey, play this.
Right.
So there are so many ways for new people to give it a shot, visit your local stores, and do some research on your own, and you'll be surprised about how less intimidating it is once you just do a little bit of research.
Any parting shots, Josh?
No, I really appreciate it. It's been awesome having you on. Definitely cool to see, more of a wargaming perspective. Again, my favorite part about having guests on is just to hear what you've done, like the stuff you're into, where you came from, all the type of gaming you got into. I'm glad to see somebody else started with Magic.
Yeah, man.
Because that was definitely the first thing that pulled me in. But yeah, man, no, absolute pleasure to have you on. Really appreciate your perspective on stuff. Yeah, man, it's been awesome.
Is there do you have social media that people can contact you on or anything?
I don't know. I'm not a really popular guy, I don't think. I have an Instagram if people care. They want to see me pick up heavy things and also paint tiny models.
I was going to say, if you want to put that out, absolutely. Just get
on Instagram, I'm Norfolk Frank Castle, because that's also who I cosplay the most, is Punisher.
That's kind of fantastic.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. I like that. Awesome. Preston, thanks again for coming on. At any time, if you feel like you have something that you want to say, that you feel like this is a good medium that you can use, look us up, and you are absolutely more than welcome to be back at any time.
Whew, we did it, guys. we made it. Oh, I appreciate you guys inviting me. From the bottom of my heart, this is a new experience for me. I've never done something like this before. So I really appreciate you guys just letting me use your platform to just hang out and talk about stuff that I'm super passionate about.
Absolutely.
And I really hope that this blows up for you guys. I'm going to start sharing it everywhere, not just because I'm on it. After that, 13 hours of listening to all your stuff, I was like, these guys are rad. Why don't more people know about this? And I mean that sincerely.
Thank you.
There's no podcasts that just go over in a very concise and easy. That's what I found the most from this, is that it's very easy to digest. I was painting models. I was cleaning my house. I was at work.
Yeah.
And all the whole time I'm listening to you guys, and I'm like, this is digestible literally fucking anywhere. It is. Especially if you love it.
Yeah.
If you're a new person into it too, though, it's like you guys are speaking evenly enough, and you're going over topics that anybody can take a good part of that and be like, oh, hey, I am going to look up what is a Kickstarter, or hey, I'm going to look into these conventions. I don't know what this is about. And then they're off Googling from there.
Right.
It's amazing.
And then we slowly draw them in.
Absolutely. Play these games with us. Indeed.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, man. Thank you guys for listening. You guys know this has been the Dapper Meeple. We'll put our stuff at the end of the episode, so if you want to reach out and talk to us, Facebook, Instagram, email, whatever you feel comfortable with, we'll be looking forward to it. Now on the Dapper Meeple, Know Your Character. This was a segment that we came up with where we actually talked about some of our favorite characters that we've played in some TTRPGs, and we have a guest on that is also a TTRPG fan. I absolutely love to do this segment, and it is Know Your Character. So what this is if you have sat at a table and if you have played somebody else, if you have done that exercise in imagination, you have probably fallen in love with one of your characters that you tell stories about because they're your stories through the eyes of this character. And we'd love for you guys to bring those in and talk about them, and then maybe find where they could fit as an NPC or something in somebody else's game. That's kind of the idea behind it. When we have a guest on, I absolutely want to hear, it's who's your favorite character and how would I stick them, in the middle of a game somewhere. Preston was our guest today.
Hell yeah.
Sat down, talked to us.
Back at it again.
Yeah, right? Let's start with character name. Do you have that character? That one that's the repeating character?
Oh, 100%.
Okay, good.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
It's ever since, my first... My first GURPS game. I don't know if you guys have.
I'm familiar.
Okay, yeah. So like played GURPS like, oh my god, I was like 13 maybe. That was like my first ever nerd experience with other human beings.
Right,
So it was a real big deal. But ever since then, broadening all the way up to now, because even in some games that I run myself, he is named Xavion of the Four Winds, and he is a monk. Because I've moved in between so many different games, that's the best way I could just describe him without any super fucking awesome adjectives and all sorts
Sure,
of stuff.
right.
He is a monk.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it. So you said he came from the GURP system, but how many different systems have you put him in?
Oh, jeez. Again, you got time, fellas. He has been in damn near, I would say, yeah. So GURPS, D&D 3rd, Pathfinder, like OG Pathfinder,
Right.
the revised Pathfinder, what people call like Pathfinder 3.5 or whatever,
Right.
or D&D 3.5. He's been in a couple of campaigns in 4th edition D&D. He's been in mostly Fate system stuff, though. That's my preferred system. It's one that I run a lot with my close friends, and ones that are easier for, I think, new TTRPG people to get into, because
definitely.
it's not so number heavy.
Mhm.
It's very much role play. So
Yes.
for people who are not familiar with the role playing aspect in TTRPGs, like that is a whole caveat of a subgenre of how to enjoy that game, because you don't have to. Clearly, you guys can roll dice, you can power game the shit out of it, you can min-max your characters and be awesome. But I think where people have the most memorable experiences or are super attaching themselves to unforgettable characters is when you role play.
Absolutely.
So Fate allows a lot for that.
It does. Anybody that has not tried Fate, I mean, it's a simple system. It can be adapted to any setting, so that is a great one to really get into. So yeah. So we're gonna call him a monk. Does he have is there a designated race?
He's human.
He's human. Okay.
He's a human monk. His race in the universe, I guess, because moving him between games, it was kind of that whole hey, do what you want. So I kind of have him where all universes are connected. So we're in a multiverse of fantasy.
Right. Yep.
So he has moved between realms because of his, when you level up in a game over 3 years, he's Omega busted in that universe.
Sure.
And, comparable to the party that he was working with. But because he's a monk, his gods allow him to traverse to other planes of existence, revert back physically to someone of a lesser status, but he keeps his mind.
Right.
So he's there to help. He's a sage kind of character, but he's very much the martial arts monk. No hand-to-hand weapons.
Okay. Oh, so it just...
Yeah, straight martial prowess, iron body, steel will.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Got it. So what kind of stats are we looking at?
Oof, God. I mean, how would you like me to answer that? Since he's moved between so many different things, I can give you a generalistic.
Yeah.
Thing. He's so your typical monk, I guess. Let's say your typical D&D monk.
Okay.
He is, very agile, very quick, very fast. Very acrobatic. Strength is a factor, is a characteristic, but of course monks train outside of raw strength because their strength comes from ki. Right?
Sure. Right. I was going to say.
Yep. So, he's very much what you would assume to be the typical monk, even though he has proficiency in melee weapons, but like polearms and chakrams.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think if I were to give his stat line a once over, he is your typical 80s martial arts movie.
I was going to say.
Perfect.
Yeah. But add a little bit of the Avatar, Last Airbender kind of previous Avatars kind of emotion to him.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense with how he's been or how that character has lived through the different versions and the different dimensions.
Multiple lives, and he's one of those that's not hung up on himself. His whole purpose, his gods give every child who's born in the monastery from my original story, they give them a mission of something to complete in the world to bring harmony, because they are the total monks that believe that there has to be evil in order for good to be resonant.
Right.
So his task given him at birth, and that he trained all the way up in the first game up to do, was to lead this party to defeating a great big bad who was a vampire who was not using humans for cattle, but he was draining them of their life essence up until they would die and hold them in stasis. So it was
way more evil.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was holding people hostage and capturing all these people, and these were a group of adventurers. There was a mercenary, there was a bounty hunter, there was a wizard who was like not actually using magic, kind of lying to people and doing card tricks and then stabbing them. So like he was our wizard, right? But he was a rogue. Let's say, yeah. And then there was me being Xavion and being like the dad. I was always like camp dad. Just herd the cats around and make sure that they remembered that good decisions and bad decisions are fine as long as we, stop the big bad.
Right.
And so yeah, sorry, we got off stats.
No, that's exactly what I'm talking. Yeah. So give me a description. Like if someone were to encounter them in a fantasy setting,
Okay.
what does he look like?
So Xavion is average height. So he's like my height. He's like 5'9", less than 6 foot. Medium build. Pretty athletic though, because obviously he's
monk.
So he's way more ripped than I am.
Right.
Like extremely.
That's my favorite part of playing fantasy games, by the way.
Oh yeah. You don't have to work out at all. Right? They look great.
He looks good.
But he's average build. He's of dark skin complexion like myself, but he has these tattoos. So that's another part of his backstory is that his race of human beings are called the Arlathi. And they were a kind of a mix between like the Saiyans from Dragon Ball Z and I guess you would say like Amazonians and other fiction.
Yeah.
The all warrior race of women kind of thing. So if you mix those two together, it was a race of like super combative humans who would peacefully settle and be farmers. They didn't know that they could fight until they were threatened. There was a mad scientist that was running around at that time and working with a dark wizard, entire civilization of cloning certain races to create this army to assist that vampire lord in his dealings.
Got it.
So when the mad scientist found a village of Arlathi people, he knew that they were prime subjects for this army.
Right.
So he started snatching up a bunch of kids, really experimenting on the men, the women, and the children, and coming to find a way to mind control them because they would always break free from their shackles. They could not physically bind these people. They were way too strong. Their tattoos would shift colors depending on what threat level that they were encountering, which would give them increased speed, increased strength, and some other wild abilities.
Right.
So when they tried it by force, they were like, damn.
This didn't work. This didn't work.
Iron Shackle's not a go-go. So then it went into the mind control or the kind of like forcing them into camps, very Nazi Germany kind of thing.
Right.
Making them feel less powerful than they were, conquering the mind instead of the body.
Yeah.
So Xavion, my character, he was captured as a child and was mind wiped, memory washed. And was the perfect soldier, very much Winter Soldier-esque.
Got it. Yeah.
He had keywords and everything. Kind of. So when I watched the movie, I was like, "Damn, they ripped it! They ripped it for me!" I'm joking.
They took that for me.
Marvel, please don't sue me. I have no money. They captured him though. He had keywords and everything, and was trained and was bred to be like one of the first leaders for this army. Halfway through his training process, though, he was coming into nature and finding like being off by himself. This mad scientist would try to run out and try to find him like a lost dog or something like that, and treated him very much like a pet. Xavion didn't know how to speak until he was off on his own doing other things, so it was very hard upbringing. But he ran away. Xavion ran away from the tower where he was kept, broke out of his chains, and used his heightened senses to find his village again. And he found that people were there that looked like him, and he had no idea that they even existed.
Right.
And he was mind blown. So before he could reach to talk to someone, though, he was snatched away. The wizards that were helping the scientists pulled him away, and he was living with that. And eventually, long story short, because we could talk about this for hours, he broke free from the scientists, killed him. But when he killed him, it unlocked one of the keywords, because that was the last keyword that the scientist said to trigger his like third state of being.
Okay.
Which is where his tattoos go from white stripes into red glowing stripes. And his eyes would, glow red, and he was in a berserker rage.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So he pretty much tore ass through half the countryside until he passed out from exhaustion and killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
When he awoke, he was at the foot of this monastery where these monks from all different races, there were dragonborns, humans, halflings, elves, who had come together to pretty much harmonize the world. And they were in secret for the whole time. But the Wizard Council was spying on them as well.
Right.
So that's where it connects everything. Long story short, one of the Grand Masters in the monastery found him at the steps, nursed him back to health, taught him how to read, taught him how to write, taught him about culture, taught him about keeping the beasts inside subdued because he knew what the power was. But then eventually he saw, that the council of the monks saw that their world was shrinking, that the influence of the wizards and the vampire lord was starting to close in. So they said, well, we're going to teach you how to fight. Like, we have to. And then they opened up a whole secret section of the monastery where all the warrior monks were being trained. And there's only 100. Right. Well, there was 99 because I'm corny. Right. Of course, Xavion was the 100th one, naturally.
Yeah. You got to be the chosen. It's my story. I tell it all once.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. So he was trained in their arts of the four winds, which was using hand strikes, using feet strikes, but also using the opponent's body against them. So a mixture of all the martial arts.
So kind of Aikido type.
Yeah, big Bruce Lee fan.
Got
so
it.
Very Aikido-esque kind of thing. But once they taught him that, they realized that he had these tattoos that were resonating and shifting colors, and they didn't know what was going on. So they gave him an amulet that he still wears to this day as he's traveled all the way through, that once he removes the amulet, it will immediately trigger his rage state. But he is in control. They taught him how to control it, which is now more dangerous.
I was going to say.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So in his adventures after leaving the monastery, he has learned how to better harness all of those powers, how to even unlock new ones, and how to better navigate the world around him so that he can exist with people that are more like him. Oh yeah, he wears robes. Sorry, we're talking about his appearance. He is fair-skinned, has tattoos, he's bald. In a lot of my earlier stories, he had a ponytail like I have. Through being a sagey monk, at some point you gotta shave it all off. Yeah, it's kind of the thing. But he has a sick beard.
That's good.
Because I can't grow one. He has his amulet and his prayer beads.
Yeah,
that are around him as well that tie into the amulet, and he has robes where obviously, so the left side of him has no sleeves. It turns into the tunic that covers the right side has a sleeve, and then that's pretty much it. He has a little knapsack.
Sure.
Sleeps under the stars, the whole 9 yards.
Because for whatever he's going to carry to the next dimension.
Yeah.
But you're going to need something.
Got to pack light.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I love it. That's a fantastic backstory.
I appreciate it.
That's great. As he's kind of moved and been to these different locations, like, what is his motivation as he's going through each one? Because he's obviously completed his original task.
His original task was completed.
So
he revisited his monastery, and this was at the end of our campaign at that time. It was being run by one of my really close friends. And when he had no other story after we had pretty much beat the big bad,
right? So
he was like, "Hey guys, do you mind just sending me stuff that your character has done as like the end credit scene, if you will?" He was like, "So we can wrap this up and have a cool thing and look back on it again." Well, I took that as game 2, motherfucker. Let's go. So
we're gonna extend this.
Oh yeah, I was like, movie 2, let's go. So. When Xavion approached to the old monastery, and this is years, in game and in real life, that had passed after they had beat the big bad, but he had went to the steps of his monastery to rejoin his fellow monks, just live the life there, become an abbot, do the whole thing. When he reached the bottom of the steps, he realized that there was a great disturbance. Something was wrong. Statues were cracked. There were, chunks of the steps missing, and there's 1,000 steps to climb because to get to the top of the monastery was the first original task, and every step was supposed to be a moment in life that you are focused on a task. So by the time you reach the 1,000th step, your mind should be in the right place to accept the training.
Sure, yeah.
So he's at the bottom, immediately takes his amulet, puts it in his pocket, goes into rage mode, zoom all the way up the stairs. By the time he's at the very top, he sees, of course, the horrible massacre of every single person he used to know. And with that, as he's moving through all the now very quiet, not lit, dank, very dark monastery that he's not used to, he is finding these weapons that are of a foreign make, like not even of his world. They're very strange. Yeah. They're organic yet metal. And he sees bodies, but they're of armor with no person inside of them.
Right, like just empty suits.
And these empty suits are also organic, pulsating, and are alive, but do not contain the person who used to wear it. So he goes and does a prayer to try to cleanse at least the inner sanctum, and it doesn't work. And this is the first time in his life that that's ever happened to him, where the gods didn't answer. And then now he's like, oh shit. This is the first oh shit moment that he has actually had. And past the big bad. We thought the big bad was bad.
Right.
So after gathering some of these, or trying to gather these armor and weapons that are laying on the ground, as he tries to pick them up and even touch them, they move out of his hand in a very gross, slimy.
Like I
way.
heard that sound in my
Right.
head.
Yep. So he realizes that this is no longer a place of worship, or that the gods have abandoned this location,
Yeah.
which is of great concern to him. So he then tries to find clues of who or what have done this, which he finds in the back of the inner sanctum, his Grandmaster's chambers. His Grandmaster's still alive, holding on to breath, but is mortally wounded. Of course, he rushes to him. I know I've picked a lot of tropes from other movies.
No.
If anybody's listening to this, you got to start somewhere,
Right?
But he goes into the back room. He, approaches his Grandmaster and he asks him, like, hey, what happened? Like, what is all this? I've only been gone for, like, at that time it was like 2 years or something of that nature. And he's like, while you were gone, he was like, we were assaulted by things not of this world. And he begins to go into a long diatribe of things that they had recorded and that the Grandmasters already knew about, but weren't exactly sure about, and it happened while he left. And in the time that Xavion was gone, when he was approaching the Vampire's Tower, the Vampire Lord had a time warp, I guess, encasement around that situation, where for them it was 2 years in that area.
Yeah.
But in the real world, it was a decade.
Okay, yeah.
So there was the whole time of war that was happening in and around the monastery, and the villages on the outside were totally devastated. So he's hearing all this bad news. And Xavion's like, well, what is my purpose now? Like, I thought that I completed my life's goals, and
Right?
his Grandmaster's like, it seems that there is more for you to do.
Yeah,
like you're the one that's going to carry our way of life into these other universes, because that's where these bad guys have gone. They came, ranched all of us, and they moved on.
Right.
So he's like, this is where they're going next, and he gave him a bead to put into his amulet that gave him the power to pretty much interdimensionally travel.
Sure. Yeah.
It was their last great wisdom that all of the Grandmasters had developed, but they had never tried it themselves.
Yeah.
They knew Xavion could take it because of his tattoos. So if there was any physical stress or any overwhelmingness, his body could handle it.
Be able to handle that, yeah.
So that's when he moved on from GURPS into D&D 2nd edition.
Nice. I picture kind of as like a quantum leap thing, because he's not the same
Right.
when he bounces somewhere else.
Yep.
So very easy then to find him in a game as an NPC somewhere.
I had never thought about this idea, though. This is such a cool
right?
idea. I never thought about that.
Where do you think he would fit?
I don't know. Here, let me hit you with a question. Or for Josh, too, actually. Pick a setting and tell me, when I say setting, like a fantasy or sci-fi. Because
Sure.
he's actually been in Shadowrun, too.
Oh, nice.
He's been in Shadowrun as a street shaman, and it was awesome. Pick a setting, and then give me, like, the current state of that world, and I'll tell you probably best where he would fit.
Eberron?
Yeah, I think that's...
So our next game that we're getting ready to kick off in our campaign is going to be in Eberron.
Hell yeah.
So it's a setting, like, this is after the war,
Okay.
right? So all of the nations have come together and signed a treaty after one of the nations, Syria, was completely destroyed. Nobody knows how. It's just called the Mournland now, and nobody survives going into it. But the rest of the nations have come together, and they're like, all right, we probably shouldn't be fighting anymore. Things got a little out of hand, So yeah, I mean, that'd be a place like... There's a nation of just nothing but monsters that has, been like, hey, you guys were busy, so we claim this land.
Oh,
this
shit.
is ours now. Right?
That's not good.
Yeah, right? But they actually hold it together real well.
Yeah,
I think
fair
that's the thing.
Yeah, that's the one thing in Eberron. Just because they are the monster races doesn't mean they're not, like, fairly civilized.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they have really tried to adapt to, like, a fairly progressive culture.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what we love about the Eberron setting, is that everything is not just generically good or evil.
Right.
Which I think a character like this would be really cool
That's
to
what I'm
fit
thinking,
into
yeah.
as somebody who is constantly seeking the balance between the two.
Right. So the other nations that are kind of left, Breland and Auster, like they're more of your traditional idea of a nation, but there's also like magic and everything, right? So it's a
Right.
very like heavy magic kind of setting. Like they have like the lightning rail. It is just what you're thinking. It is a train.
Oh, hell yeah.
That goes
Damn.
across. That's powered by the dragon shards, which are magical stones and stuff they have. So
How cool
that's the
is
kind
that?
of setting that it is. A high magic setting. Just came out of the entire continent was at war. So yeah, what kind of where would he fit in there? Like, because there's still stuff going on.
Of
right?
course,
Like,
yeah.
The war has ended, which was everybody's big problem.
But post-war sometimes is more rough
Right.
than the war.
Right.
I think in that setting, he would have tried, if he had just popped in and that was the that was the current state of the world. He's always looking a place to develop a monastery at first, because that's this only idea of home to him is a monastery, because that's where he was raised in, people actually caring about him as opposed to the scientist. So he would try to develop some small monastery somewhere if he could. But then the monastery is also kind of like his base of operation.
Sure.
Or at least when he's not with a party, where he's going to be at most at peace and able to think about the next moves. Right. So he would develop a monastery, but then he would probably go around trying to figure out for himself, who were the good guys, who were the bad guys.
Right. Yeah.
And try to make sense of what the outcome was regardless.
Yeah.
But with his monastery, I guess, like, if your players had interacted with him, he would be someone to give guidance to, or to be a temporary party member to lead them through something spiritually heavy.
Yeah, I got
so
that.
Something very that's like, magic is here, because that's one of his sayings, is that, magic is the organism's way to develop through spirituality. So
nice.
Everything is always spiritual to him, even if you're casting fireballs out of your hand.
Sure, yeah.
So he's like, there's some gods that are making that appear.
Right,
to you. So he would help the party as a spiritual guide or a temporary party member to lead them through something where nobody's individual specialty in the party is working.
Right. I could see that.
So would you say he would look to develop his monastery somewhere more like rural or like an urban environment?
He because he's done this before. So this was in Shadowrun.
Okay, yeah.
Where he made a tattoo parlor that was the cover for the monastery, because in that Shadowrun world, all the religion was bad. So his cover was the tattoo parlor, and he had the monastery underground. So in an urban environment is where I think you would find him the most. It'd be like going to New York and getting like a book from one of those random monks that's walking around.
Right,
they're fake, but they're actually, the monastery's like right there.
Right, yeah.
So I think it'd be one of those. The party would stumble upon him in a metropolitan area, and he would stand out because of his clothing.
Yeah,
and then
I like that.
Then it would be like, oh, well, you had to see him because his clothes are so different. And to Xavion, that's spiritual guidance moving through the world. Even though he's wearing yellow, red, and orange robes.
Yeah, right. I could definitely see him in Sharn.
Yeah, so I think I might. So I haven't finished my backstory for my character yet.
Okay.
He's a halfling. There is a tribe of halflings called from the Talenta Plains. They are known as being dinosaur tamers.
Oh, shit.
They're a nomadic tribe. They ride around on dinosaurs, the whole 9 yards.
That's rad.
But a lot of halflings have also moved to like the city and become more like civilized type. So he is kind of riding the line between, because he's an artificer. So eventually, once we get there, he's going to have a dinosaur, but it's going to be one he built.
Oh, that's so cool. It's like the Megazords or something.
Right,
from, like,
exactly.
Power Rangers.
Yes.
That's
so
rad.
what I picture, so I haven't finished his backstory because I've been trying to figure out how he made the switch from like being in this nomadic tribe to like picking up these artificer skills.
Yeah.
And I picture it would probably be something that would be difficult for him and would need some sort of spiritual guidance. So I don't know. We might work him into his backstory where maybe he meets him somewhere in Sharn and is able to kind of help him walk through those things.
That would be awesome. Yeah. That'd be awesome. Awesome. Hey, Preston, thanks again. I love the backstory. I love the character. I think it fits great as that like spiritual guide that kind of pops in to direct the party. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So there you go, guys. That is Xavion of the Four Winds. If you have a monastery in need of a leader or a wayward party in need of some direction, this is a great NPC to throw in there.
Hell yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for sticking around and listening to our show.
If you enjoyed it, let me ask you a favor. Follow us and leave us a like wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us out.
And if you have anything to say back to us, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for The Dapper Meeple. On Twitter, our handle is @TheDapperMeeple, or email us at dappermeeplegaming@gmail.com.
And as always, we'll save you a seat at the table.